Hello and welcome to Champions Network Television. Today's topic evolves around how the ethnic minority startups navigate the entrepreneurial business jungle. We plan to focus on the business opportunities applicable to the ethnic minority. We also plan to navigate the following: brand penetration, ethnic minority startup success stories, ethnic minorities in association with business development, business hurdles, e-commerce, effective networking. Hi, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay. Hi viewers, welcome back to Champions Network TV. Today's topic is how the ethnic minority navigate the startup business jungle. And today we are going to discuss, and our leader in this discussion today is none other, Mr. Makombe, who is a businessman in his own right, and he has also helped other people who start up businesses across the country, even on the African continent. Welcome, Mr. Makombe.
Welcome, thank you. Right, today the objective is to explore the entrepreneurial business jungle. How do we navigate this jungle as a member of the ethnic minority community? Just today, when I was taking a stroll, I got talking to this guy of Zimbabwean origin, and we were talking about ethnicity and the challenges he was experiencing. I invited him to define what ethnicity is about, and he came up with a very interesting response. He said ethnicity is something that is black and non-white. That was his interesting topic. That was his interesting response to what ethnicity is. And he went on to say that structural presentation he highlighted comes with a lot of deficits: discrimination, inability to liaise with significant people, poor networking, and so on and so on. Now we are saying, we've got an influx of people of African origin or ethnic minority who are going into business. So how do we coordinate and navigate the way forward with these people? This is what we want to talk about today. You've all gone quiet, isn't it?
Thank you very much. Shumba, what do you make sense of the definition for ethnicity? Someone said it's black, non-white. It comes with a lot of challenges, access to things, and the discrimination.
Yeah,
what is your take for the question?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that definition. Really, it's coming into someone's country. You are not familiar with the processes and procedures, so it doesn't really relate only to business. It relates to the way of life, right? When you come into someone else's country, whether you go to France, Germany, Australia, Canada, first of all, you have to adapt to the way of doing things, the culture that exists in that environment. And then if you want to engage in business, there's a certain way, there are certain pathways that you're supposed to follow. So I think when we talk of ethnicity or ethnic minorities in the context of business, I think it's knowing the business culture and knowing how to navigate yourself in order to set up a business and run it successfully. So that would be my answer to sort of ethnicity in business.
Right. At what point do we facilitate a pathway to engage other communities when it comes to business? Because a lot of people come to countries like these as employees. You don't start up as a business entity. Yes, there are a few, but I mean, sizable number of people who have done that. But if you're coming from or operating from scratch, how do you facilitate that? Where are we getting it right and where are we getting it wrong? Are we ready for this kind of challenge, or we just bulldoze into it and then we make mistakes as we go? For instance, the Asian community has got an effective networking structure which we do not have. Could it be a good role model for them to facilitate the way they do business or entrepreneurial structures? Where are we getting it wrong, or where are we getting it right?
Yeah, I could say in terms of networking, what I found with other minorities, I'll take an example of it's not even only the Asians. I could say Asians with of Muslim background. What you find is their mosques are more than just for worshiping. They are for business networking. And so when they meet at those mosques, yes, they will pray, but after prayer, they are networking as well. So what you will find is they coordinate in whatever they do. As a result, like they pass their expertise within the same community. Let's say someone is an electrician, someone is a shop owner, someone is doing delivery. So they already know, if I want an electrician, they link up now, they are networking. If I want an electrician, I'll phone so and so. If I want a plumber, I'll phone so and so. It's within the community. So I think networking is very important. And I see that most of the time in our African diaspora, I think there's a missing link. Yes, there are networks within there, but I think they are not as strong enough as in other communities. If you look at Indians as well, they've got these gurdwaras where they meet, right? And then you've got the Sikhs. They've got also these temples where they meet. And these are more than just meeting places. Yes, in our African way, we've got churches, but sometimes you see the churches, they just stick to the church business, and then they don't deviate to be a networking place for business.
So are we then saying that we need a renewal of mindset? Because a lot of our people subscribe to churches big time, and the membership is very healthy. But what happens post the membership is the missing link, I think. Because at the end of the day, if we don't know what to do with the numbers, then we come back to the significant talk that we cannot count? Are we saying we are unable to count and facilitate something out of the numbers we have? Are we now saying that we don't understand crowdfunding? Or do we have that kind of communication with significant others out there in the churches? Because, I mean, people of African origin are very easy to convince to attend a church service. And I'm pretty sure you'll agree with me. But at the end of the day, what happens post the church service? Do we network or we just go home?
Yeah, I think I just want to add to what Shumba and what you are also saying yourself. I had this scenario where I was assessing this man who needed support. So I needed to go and see where he lives. So they gave me the number of who was supposed to be the landlord. Then apparently I had to meet this man at it's at a mosque. So after talking about, so I then wanted to know how he manages his houses. Apparently, the mosque, they acquire properties as a congregation of the mosques. They buy properties, and they then rent these properties to their members. And so that it's a double. They already have got a captive market for their tenants, and they are buying the properties with the funds for the mosque. So it's a chain of things happening within the same community with value addition, which to some extent we don't find within the African communities. To say they don't say maybe to start with the buying one house as a church, and the church members who are renting from private landlords can come and rent in those properties, and before you know it, you have got two.
But are we socialized in that format? Are we geared and ready to give another black person some business? That seems to be an issue.
I don't think it's an issue. I think the issue is just education, because I always believe that education is cumulative, right? Yeah. So if you miss that kind of education growing up, like I don't think personally I've had that kind of education growing up in Zimbabwe. But if you look at, let's take, for example, the churches that came through colonialism in Zimbabwe, whether it's Catholic, Seventh-day Adventist, Methodist, who were some of them became the biggest providers of private schooling in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
They became the biggest providers of healthcare.
Right.
Right. So what's actually happening is because all the money of the congregation is being collected to buy, like Misha said, they go buy properties. And if you look, even the Anglican Church in Harare, you'll be surprised how much properties they own within Harare. But for us, as soon as we start these churches, I think most of the churches we have, they are sort of, there's one individual running that church. So all the wealth that we are talking about, it accrues to one individual. So that's where the problem.
Mindset regeneration then.
Yeah.
Mindset regeneration is what we are talking about now?
Yeah. Mindset regeneration, to say when we go to church, we need to be part and parcel of whatever that church is doing, the business part of that church. Let's not just be congregants within that church. Like Misha said, the mosques, they buy houses. The congregants, they rent those houses from, and there's a certain aspect, even though they don't at the end of the day maybe benefit financially, it's also benefiting their community, because sometimes those rents are subsidized. So which means me as a renter, I'm left with some disposable income, and that makes me better off. So we don't always think about it in terms of maybe I'll gain financially, but also that the mosque will rent it out to me at an affordable rate, and then I have disposable income, and most of my disposable income I'm also spending it within the same community, you know.
The
I'm
Jewish
going
model.
to the shops, I'm bringing in an electrician from my community. So this is what we see, that within our African diaspora, most of the times these are the missing links.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting suggestion.
And I think it's interesting you mentioned the Anglican in Zimbabwe, particularly in Harare. I'm not if it is true that our government rented their properties for parliament since 1980 until recently, when they moved to the
That's true.
Parliament House. So it's interesting. So I don't know. Anglican was making a lot of money, and
And
we were ready.
none of us knew. We thought the government of Zimbabwe owned those properties. Yeah, so they've been making a killing.
But we are not. We don't have that kind of exploration mindset to find out who is who and what is what. I think we as Black people tend to subscribe to the circle of friends type of analogy, whereby wanita marounds or banana mari, right? But then that money is used for different, or I don't know whether to call it the wrong reasons. Some people buy cars, some people buy groceries, and so on. So in no time, if somebody has managed to accumulate 9 grand or 10 grand, at the end of the day, they don't have it.
Yeah, it comes back down to education. You know, when you, I remember when I was working in Zimbabwe, I had, we would go to negotiate our salaries, and one of our managers used to say to us, "What do you Black people need money for?" You know, so so you just think that kind of mindset, because they know we are not exposed to wealth creation. So they think you don't really need money apart from money that can make you take your kids to school and things like that. I think for me, it's the education system, because I think we said it before in one of our sessions, to say the problem with our education system is in 1980, we didn't look to say this was meant to make us better employees. It was never meant to make us better employers. So as a result, that wealth creation aspect of education was not afforded us. So we needed to revamp the education system to include all these things that we are talking about here. To say, what do churches do? You know, there's a book that I was reading, Money is Everything. How finance brought
financial engineering, basically.
World, right?
Yeah.
You can see there's a chapter on Knight Templars, and these were the church people here in the UK. These are the people who were funding the Crusades, if you know the Crusades, going to Israel, fighting those wars on behalf of Christians. If you find that these guys ended up creating a financial network that all the kings of Europe were using. The kings of Europe used to go to the Knight Templars to borrow money. to fund either wars or to fund their budget, government budget deficits. They were going to the Knight Templars. So this is the game of numbers, like you say, Mr. Makombe. When you've got the numbers, know how to use those numbers. Most churches are full, but are people taking advantage that these churches are full? What can we do with the contributions that we do? And then you spoke about Marounds II. Of course, now I've seen a lot of people who are doing amazing things with things like that they are bringing all their money together, getting involved in some projects back home and even here in the UK. So there's some people who are teaching our community to say, this is how you create wealth. But we still need those lessons to go, especially to the young generation, to say, this is how you build wealth, and you need to take risk whilst you are still young.
Yeah, but then that is not happening. I think there's this concept of learning from the known into unknown. We've got a lot of knowledge evolving around us, but we don't seem to use it constructively, or we ignore it. Because if we were to facilitate the knowledge into something tangible, we'll be in a position to create wealth. Because wealth creation is about filtering the dead wood and going ahead with those who want to go places. That type of gospel is not happening at the moment. I told you, I mean, when people go to church, they go to pray ostensibly for, I don't know, for blessings, but they forget to tell God that we also need money. And that is a collaborative act. So if you don't tell God, He will bless you, yes. But money is a different ballgame. Because, I mean, wealth creation demands a lot of activity and significant others. One must understand that, I mean, the core issue, the core person in any money-making structure begins with you, the I. If you are the one, you are then in a position to cascade your knowledge to various other people out there. Those various other people must be in a position to accept the gospel and create crowdfunding entities. It's so satisfying. I don't know why. Because it's not kubirana.
Yeah, but kubirana kwacho, it's I could say kubirana kana vanhu tichitya kubirwa. It's like admitting we lack organization to put structures in place.
Because we don't even have it as kubirana. You'll find somebody has got £2,000 in their pocket and they hold on to it until inflation claims all of it.
Yeah, so you know, when there are processes, apana kuba kwacho kunonetsa. So I think it's a matter of creating processes so that if someone can easily steal, which means there are no processes at all. Because if there are processes, the idea that you can steal, you have to put effort for you to steal. And one point I wanted to add is, like, I lived in Australia, right? I'll tell you, one of the biggest manufacturer of, here we call it Weetabix, right?
Right.
The manufacturer of Weetabix in Australia is the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It has industries in Australia. The children's drinks that they drink every morning going to school, you know, you peg them with their lunch. They are one of the biggest producers, right? And then when you go to healthcare, one of the biggest hospital in Sydney is a Seventh-day Adventist hospital. It's about, last time I went, it was having a renovation. It's about 21 stories up.
Oh.
It was having, the time I went, it was having a 10 million facelift. So So I always say there's power in these organizations, because we are witness to it. When you look at the Anglican Church, the schools that it had in
Anglican Church in this country used to own Wonga. Wonga, Friday pay, whatever.
Yeah,
They
I used to
own that.
go to those schools. Like I used to play volleyball in Zimbabwe, and we used to go and compete. Nana St. Ignatius. Yeah, and you just see good. These are wonders. This is a school. When you talk of a school, you say, yeah, I've got to a school now. Yeah. So there's no excuse that we can still do those things. That was a very good example of how we can build institutions. But I don't know where we lost the way along the way.
Well, we've definitely lost the plot. Because so far we are customizing things on a personal level. We are not focusing on group development. That's not happening at the moment. Because when we try to facilitate networking, effective networking, it goes through a breakdown along the way, whereby one wants to own the coat of an elephant or the whole elephant, and then the whole thing collapses.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we are having a lot of interesting projects, startups saying, okay, let's do this. We want to build houses. Within a year, somebody has stolen the money. There's been a misappropriation of funds. So how do we educate each other that, Mariam Rukubai Shomai, we should focus on, other methods of creating this world.
Yeah, and the other thing, Mr. Makombe, is like, I listen to some of these young startups, even in America or in this country. I was, because if you invest in some of these companies, because I invest in some of these companies, I remember investing in Fever Tree. Do you know Fever Tree? Yeah. And then I read the history of it. Wow. These guys, when they came up with their vision, they weren't looking for money from their relatives. There should be an idea of risk-taking. Our young people should be used to risk-taking. The guy went looking for money from relatives. I've come up with this idea. Can you buy shares in my company?
Wow.
I might fail and you might not get your money. So give me money you think you are comfortable in losing. And if you look at the share of Fever Tree, when it listed on the London Stock Exchange, I think it was around £1. Yeah. And then at one time it went to £31 a share. So which means if you had put your 1,000, within a matter of 3 years, it was £31,000.
Yeah.
So you see, this is the power that we are not talking only of churches. We're talking of encouraging even our young people to say, when you've got ideas, you need to go to your family, your friends, to fund that whatever project you have in mind. And just be honest with them that there is a risk they might lose their money. But if you believe in what you are doing, you tell them as well that if I manage to do what we will reach paradise. And obviously, sometimes you reach paradise. Yeah.
There's an interesting event that I hate. Each time I go to Milton Keynes, there's this guy who owns a butchery. I think Palmer's. I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to say it. Yeah. But he doesn't employ any black person in his establishment, as far as I know. The majority of the customers are of African or black origin. And this guy's making a mint. My gut feeling is, are we saying we are not in a position to facilitate or create a butcher of the same caliber? Are we just simply resigned to buying or giving this guy money until infinity? This was quite a...
But it's not only up there, even here in Manchester, near Manchester, we've got Bradford where people go. It's South Africans who are running that.
Yeah. Are we saying
we all even leave our fellow countrymen's butcheries rushing. It's even more expensive than our fellow.
The Polish came to this country. Now they have got supermarkets of their own, serving their own foodstuff. The Chinese have done the same. We South Africans have come and created South African shops. We haven't done that. Where is the Asda? Where is the Zimbabwean Asda? Where is it?
And even where I live, a minute walk from my place. It's not even 2 years ago. The guy is a Polish. He started just a small shop, and now he has got it's full with the vegetables at the front, and there's a butcher at the back.
Yeah.
Boss, you know, I was into the vegetable business.
Of course. Yes.
Right. I used to come to New Spitfields in London.
Yeah.
I've been to Birmingham, the Birmingham vegetable market. Of course, Manchester is my back door.
Yeah.
Right. I'll tell you one thing that will disturb you when you go all these markets. I would say 75% of the vegetables, some of the are coming from Africa.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But look at all those stores. You don't see an African operating a stall in those places.
No.
So I was speaking to one Indian guy in Spitfields in London. He said to me, I was seeing these boxes, produce of Uganda, produce of Uganda, produce of Uganda. I said, what sort of a country doesn't stop exporting? Yeah. Because at least me, I'm from India. I know that sometimes things are seasonal. There's no mango throughout the year. But when you talk of Uganda, it seems like there's no season.
There's no season, absolutely.
I said, do they have greenhouse or what's going on there? I said, no, I'm going to fly there.
Wow.
The guy went there. He said, what I saw was amazing. I can't believe there's such a country, So what did he do? He bought his first farm in Uganda.
Ah, right.
Yeah. So now, most of his colleagues there at Smithfields, when they order, they are ordering from him. And he still maintains his stall there, but most of the goods now
are coming direct from Uganda.
It's him. Now he was telling me, I've bought my second farm now in Uganda.
But are we saying we can do this?
Exactly.
We can do
it. Yeah, but we are not doing it.
And there's some of us who even know people who are in Uganda. We have got large tracts of land there.
Yeah, exactly. But we just don't do that.
Not only that, speaking of that, the guy who encouraged me when I started was actually a guy in Birmingham, an Indian guy. This is where networking is very powerful. He sat down with me. I didn't pay him. And he said to me, young man, if you want to do this business, I'll tell you what to do. I've been in this business. I used to come to Zimbabwe so often. You don't know what sort of country you've got, because the produce that comes from that country, the quality is next to none.
Absolutely.
He said, when I used to come to Zimbabwe, what I used to do, the amount of produce he was mentioning all the places, Muhammad, everywhere. And he said, when I'm coming back, the plane is full of my produce. Yeah. And then he said one profound thing. He said to me, when you are doing this business, don't touch apples, don't touch bananas, don't touch. These are big business. You are competing with Asda, you are competing with Tesco. Don't touch. But I didn't pay him for that kind of advice. You know, he's someone who just liked me and started saying these things to me. So what I'm saying, most of these things, it's through networking, through education, and through taking risk as well. Because without any element of risk, you don't go anywhere.
Risk is
No, we are risk
adverse. We are not socialized that way. So are we saying we should go back to the churches and socialize with them in terms of what wealth creation is, or let them understand what liquid money is about? Because something has to give. Because we don't seem to understand that.
I think it's all about education. As long, I think even in churches, that kind of education needs to start if it was not there. And that, when we talk of that education, it's not only about business when we talk about that. I've always said, Guti, one other thing that lacks in the African diaspora is even our politics is not heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see what the Jews here or the Muslims here, all the governments, all the political parties knows that there is a section of the Muslims.
Yeah.
And when the elections are about, they have to say certain things in order to lose those kind of voters.
Yeah.
You go to the Jews as well, you have to say certain things that align with the
certain brand language which they implement.
But we as Africans, we haven't got one voice that represents us to say these are our requirements. As a result, we are just ordinary voters.
No, it's called customized death.
Yeah.
They've customized our way of dying.
You go to America, I think every president in America, before they even get into office, they've got to go and address IPAC, which is the Jewish lobby in America. So we need to have that kind of voice as African diaspora. We are quite a sizable number that we can have an impact. So I hope maybe some of the young people are listening and start formulating some of these organizations where we speak.
The other thing is, we are having too many awards. Right. We are having too many awards. Who are we awarding? And yet, backstage, we are exhibiting a lot of poverty. It should be about wealth creation, how we facilitate it, the ground rules pertaining to that, significant people, effective networking, and so on and so on. Choice analogy, wisdom thinking. We should be able to follow that pathway so as to develop each other as per se. So far, it's not happening. That's why you find that, there are quite a lot of kids who have now resorted to, drug addiction and so on and so on. So I don't know.
And I think one of the challenges of the church is we have a church being led by a pastor who did theology, and then he thinks he is a guru in all aspects of life, business, and everything. He teaches the church on every aspect of life. There is no specialization to say we have got a platform for Mr. Makombe, who is a business entrepreneur who teaches our church members how to do business. And we have got a health practitioner who can teach our church members how to stay healthy, all different aspects. The only church that I've come across of African origin that seem to do that, especially on the business front, is which one? Ashmolo's one.
Yeah. But then, if you look at the Ashmalos one, I mean, it's a corporate entity itself, in itself. I'm not a big on a blazwire. I'm telling you.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. The structure of most of those churches, you find that most of that wealth, it accrues to
one
the
person.
founder.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what we are saying, let's say this Champions Network, it's your brainchild, Misha, but eventually you need to include other people looking for expertise and looking for that team to say, I want investors in this thing to grow it forward, rather than for it to just remain static, being your individual Misha thing. This thing should go global. And me and Makombe will say, we once spoke when Misha founded.
Misha invited us.
Yeah?
We just say, Misha invited us at some point.
Yeah, Misha invited us and he started his thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I think
this is the thing that we people will say, oh, so and so owns that, right? Elon Musk owns Tesla. It's just a figure of speech. Behind Tesla, there are a lot of investors. Yeah, there are plenty of investors. So, Misha, you need to start looking for investors behind the scenes. You are the face of champions, but there should be investors who are funding your dream. You know? Yeah. So that's how we get to be successful. Even those churches that we are talking about, you can approach them to say, can you invest in my venture?
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. So these are the ideas of how we can move forward as a community and as a society.
Because if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah. Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Yeah. Quite point taken loud and clear, and it's interesting. It's getting more interesting as we go along. Now, I just wanted to comment on when we spoke about ethnic minority. It also depends with the context. Obviously, in this case, we are talking about the context of the United Kingdom. In our countries, the ethnic minority seems to be the ones running the show. How is it like that? Like we were talking about the people who came to Africa, colonized us, and they ran the system. But we came this side. We don't do the same.
I think there's this urge to be employed, because an average person is looking for a job, but very few are going into entrepreneurship because of hardship. The majority of them are simply saying, you know what, I want a job. And I meet a lot of people like that. Can you get me a job? But nobody ever comes and says, look, can you invest in this? Like Shumba was saying. Say, boss, can you, put £2,000 in this venture. I need to do A, B, C, D. Very few people do that. Most of them want a job. And when you try and say, look, okay, you can buy a franchise of me and do A, B, C. No, that is too long. That's why I keep saying the biggest tragedy we are facing is death. Trukufa manje chisiya zvakadai. Ai kaka.
And we hope I'm movie.
Hey, that's you see. I hope I'm living manje, but the way things are going, years seem to be flying past. But yeah.
No, I agree with you, Guti. like I said, in my emphasis is on education, unless we change our education system, because it was designed that way from the start. And we never reverted to an education system. Remember, when we were colonized, most businesses were being run by one particular section of the community.
Mm.
Yeah. And we, of course, we had black entrepreneurs, but breaking through was so difficult because it was not in that mindset of saying the education prepares you for that. And then the second one.
On hindsight, education is rehearsed knowledge. It's not designed to make you a genius.
Yeah. And then the next one you are talking about is the emphasis on looking for work.
Yeah.
And the reason why, people end up looking for work, like you are saying, they are grounded in poverty. Then entrepreneurship is even more riskier for them. Maybe the little money they get for them to think, oh, I'll start a business.
But poverty is next to death, Shumba.
Yeah, exactly. But we don't think that
when
way.
Poverty sets in, the next thing is death.
Yeah. But we grew up with a mindset that even me, I would say I was not so much business-minded until I came to the UK, because all I grew up is you go to school, you get a very good job. And you have, to be honest, in Africa, if you've got a good job, the pay is very good. And you don't think, oh, I want to risk starting some venture. No.
We need
so
mindset
imagine you start working, you've got a company house, a company car, you think, no, I'll leave this to Mr. Makombe and Misha. And then when you ask me, I'm a manager at so and so. So that matters is a rango manager,
Yeah.
Where I used to work in Kafka, they give you a car, of course, and they will give you lunch at work every day, so that you don't have to worry about eating.
That was typical.
That is dangerous.
That was typical. In Africa, it's typical.
Africans and cars don't need.
The first time I came here and I was going to this job, and at the interview, I kept on asking, "What do we do for lunch?" And I couldn't. Then they told me, "Oh, you bring your your lunch box. There's a microwave."
What do we do for lunch? What do you want to do?
That's true.
What was in your mind? What do you do for lunch?
Then he talked about this lunch box and the microwave. It didn't make sense.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense. Yeah.
No, they think, where is this guy coming from? What's he talking about?
Yeah, he's talking about, what do you do for lunch?
Yeah, yet in Africa, if I've got a good managerial position, even my wife gets perks from my job. You know that. Yeah. Mm.
I remember even during the time when things were tough in Zimbabwe and in Grossa, we used to have a Christmas hamper for everybody, and so it keeps you.
Bonuses. You think they do bonuses in the UK?
Misha was not changed. The guy is too money is in bereavement.
I don't know who came up with that idea. What was going on?
That was the wrong way of doing business.
Even up to now, it exists.
In Kafka, even up to now, it exists.
Why don't they give them money or some bonus of some sort? My sausage in my drinks. That is out. That is out. No wonder why this guy was asking, what do we do for lunch?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I remember at my workplace, we used to every month the driver would be sent to buy about a month's supply of meat, company on the company account.
Wow.
Yeah, so every day at work, those who want sadza, it will be cooked there, and you
But
can have sadza for
it
lunch.
was beneficial to some extent, yeah.
Yeah, it's beneficial, but I think it gives you some dependency.
Yeah,
That
but that's
that
illicit dependence, though. It's wrong, totally
yeah,
wrong.
the level of dependence becomes too much.
Yeah, toxic.
It becomes toxic. Like we are saying with bonuses and things like that. I don't know. There are benefits to somehow, but the kind of dependence you have then becomes. I think it's
Yeah.
where you structure the economy, because bonus was not bad when the economy was kicking.
Then bonus was bad, Baba.
Explain.
That's the worst innovation.
Explain.
It's not something I believe in. When I look back and on hindsight, what was the objective of a bonus?
No, I need to research on it, because what I'm thinking, the bonus was it not? They started it during sanctions to increase consumption, to increase demand of things.
Probably.
It could have been an innovation to increase consumer demand.
And then you'll be told that you're going to get the 13th check.
Yeah.
Can you
So
see
when you
yourself
get the
approaching the
goods,
NHS to say, look, I need a 13th check?
oh my God.
They'll kick you out.
Yeah. I think it was to boost the demand. I'll look into its origins, because everything is there. I'll probably look into its origins. What was the idea behind it? Because those guys were smart as well. We need to give them credit. If you look at the guys behind Zimbabwe's economy that time, they were really smart people. You don't underestimate them.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very smart. Do you know, when we took independence, our economy, I think the GDP of our economy was at par with Australia, or even above Australia slightly.
I mean, the Ian Smith crew was really good.
Yeah.
They knew how to administer, the country, and they did a good job.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It was for the minority, but they did a good job.
Yeah.
We are not, obviously, when you start talking about, they say, oh, you're looking, we screwed up. We could have turned Zimbabwe into a paradise, but we screwed up.
Yeah. We had that opportunity, yes.
Yeah, we screwed up. So we
But
need
it's
to
not too
admit
late.
mistakes when they were done.
It's not too late. My only fear is death. This one is worried about whether he can have a meal or so. So, I mean, my wife is dead.
No, me, I'm not afraid of death, because it's inevitable.
It will come when it will come, but
Yeah. Because
but
they always say, when we were at work, we said, kana wapinda basa chasara kubuda.
yeah.
Yeah, kana wazvarwa chasara kufa. So
that's why
Vadoda mafiro acho.
no,
mafiro acho.
ana basa.
Apani basa sha. Ani basa. Don't say that.
But you can't control it, Makombe.
You cannot control it, I understand. But then
But you can prepare for it.
you would want a
But
decent departure.
maybe you are right. Yokufa uchirohwa musaga. I
See what I
think
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your rule of law, I always say to people, even from the Middle East, some of my friends, I always say, one thing I respect about the Western world, particularly the UK, is the rule of law.
Yeah.
That's the secret ingredient to
Yeah.
a successful nation. Once you have that, you can run anything.
Yeah, you're very right.
Yeah, because sometimes you look, I go out here midnight, you see an old woman walking a dog. She doesn't have care in the world that someone is gonna rob them. But I grew up in Zimbabwe. You have to be home by 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if those lions, yeah, but the lions of the night, if they come out and catch you,
there you go.
Yeah.
I'm mindful of Shumba's commitment to go away.
Yeah, I think we have.
It has been an interesting discussion, but I think there's a lot that we haven't touched on that we can. I think we may need a follow-up, and especially the monster called AI. We didn't even mention it in this discussion.
Yeah.
I think it may need actually a session on its own, because I think it's quite massive. I don't know if Shumba, if you want to just give your final thoughts before Mr. Makombe gives us the closing remarks.
I think it was an interesting discussion. I think what we leave our viewers with is we need to collaborate as Africans. The African diaspora needs to collaborate, not only in business, but even in politics, so that we bring our numbers together. I think you can fight collectively. You can win your battles if you fight collectively. So we need to be counted when it comes to networking. We need to network more. We also need to increase our education in terms of business and politics, because those two, they go hand in hand. So those are the things that we need to really push, and we need to constantly encouraging our young people to take risks whilst they are young. I always say, if you look at the history of Cecil John Rhodes, it was all about risk taking. The guy left the Scotland to go to Natal. First of all, he wanted to do cattle ranching, but it wasn't successful, but he had risked. And then the brother called him to when Kimberley started, the diamond rush in Kimberley, and that's where he went. And then he made his fortune in the diamond fields of South Africa, and then he moved into gold. And now, when you talk of his money, even up to now, you cannot exhaust the guy's money. Right now, he offers scholarship to
Rhodes scholarships and things.
Yeah, and they say it's just interest that's being used for most of those ventures. And he had his friend Alfred Bate. And Bate is he dedicated his money to building infrastructure in Africa. That's why you find these Bate walls, Bate Bridge. In Zimbabwe, we've got 2 Bate bridges unbeknown to people. We have got the Bate Bridge, Zimbabwe, South Africa. And then we've got Bate Bridge, Zambia, Zimbabwe, the one we call Chirundu. It's actually a Bate Bridge. And then we've got Bate walls all around the country in Zimbabwe and in South Africa. So these guys, they came to South Africa. It was a risk they were taking. It didn't mean they were going to be successful, but they ended up being very successful. So we need to teach our young people that sometimes they need to take risks. Like I said, Misha, in our previous chat, I was talking to my brother's son, and I said, there are young people, white people, who are leaving UK to go and stay in Zimbabwe. Some are in their 20s. Why are they going there? It's because they always take risks. So let's encourage our people, our young people, to travel and take risks. There are a lot of opportunities around the world, and especially in Africa, our young people doesn't need to be just static to say, oh, I'm from Zimbabwe. You always go to Zimbabwe, travel across the continent and see what's happening and take advantage of the opportunities that are available. I think that's what I can say for tonight.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Mine is going to be in the form of a bullet point. I'm going to talk about the I concept briefly. Everything begins with I, right? And then it develops into significant others. If you don't get it right from the I level, then it becomes difficult to market that kind of package to other people. We should focus on risk management. What constitutes risk? Is it worth it? And so on. We should have that level of self-interrogation to ensure that, one is in a position to understand a way forward. We should learn the concept of what we know into the issues we do not know. The fact that we know a lot of things, there's a lot of knowledge around and abundant, but are we in a position to go and venture out into knowledge we don't know about? So the concept of known into the unknown is something we need to invest in. We need to effectively network. That's very important. If you don't effectively network, then you will be lost. That train will pass you without a problem. The other issue would evolve around money. Understand financial engineering. Understand the politics of poverty. Understand what wealth creation is. Understand generational wealth. If you were poor and you manage to buy a car and you die without escalating your poverty level via the upward mobility trade, then you are going to remain poor. So that poverty of thought has to be eradicated. It's something we've got to start talking about. We need to start having those kind of conversations. Instead of beer hall, nightclub talk, we should have platforms where we just interrogate ourselves about personal development and things like that. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Viewers, we have heard it from our panelists. And I think one thing that we can take away is let's have platforms that interrogate issues that takes us to the next level, effective networking, wealth creation, and the all things start with the capital, the I concept, which then as cascade to the significant others, and we then create wealth. Stay tuned on this platform. We will be interrogating this concept more in detail one by one. So I can't thank you enough, Mr. Makombe and Shumba, for expounding on these issues. Good night to our viewers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.